Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Imperfect CPA. It's your host, Eric McLaughlin. Of course, I'm the Imperfect CPA, and I appreciate you all joining us for another broadcast on today. And it's going to be an exciting show. I think every show is going to be an exciting show because we're talking about probably what most people's favorite topic is money, the one thing we can never get enough of. And I'm so excited to share with you all today. And I just want to thank everyone that's provided comments and shared their congratulations and shared the great things that they're getting out of even last week's session where we talked about budgeting. And I shared my insights about my budget and things that I learned. And hopefully you all have learned some things. I've had some of you all ask to receive the budget, and I will make sure I do that. If you make sure that you email me, that's really the best way for me to make sure that I get it to you. I'll have it up on my website. I've already talked to my website folks. They're going to work on having that up probably by in another week or so. But in the meantime, if you just email me at cpa@ericmclaughlinllc.com, cpa@ericmclaughlinllc.com, and I'll try to type it in the show notes as well. Then I'll send you a copy of the budget and we can get started on that. But today, we're going to talk about income. We're going to talk about positive cash flow. And I'm also going to have a special guest that's going to come in, and he's going to share his experiences with money and what he's learned and those kinds of things. And that's going to be part of what I do pretty much every show. Is I want us to understand and come to terms with the fact that, making money and changing money habits and starting to build up wealth for ourselves, it's not just the people that we see on Instagram or Facebook or wherever they are, people with flashy cars that are making good, sound financial decisions. It's everyday folks, like you and I. And that is to be done purposely. I'm doing that purposely so that you can know that you too can do the things that I talk about in my book, Make Money Your Employee. You too can be able to build up wealth and start from where you are. So let's get into it. So we're going to talk about income today, what we call the cash inflow. And the reason why I thought I'd start with that is because in the book that I referenced last week, and in the book that we're going to talk about a little bit more today, they talk about principles to apply and that the wealthy man, RCAD, applied to be able to accumulate wealth. And one of the things that it talks about that is really important, which may seem obvious to most folks, but it needs to be said, is that you've got to have a source of income to be able to save some, right? If you don't have any cash flow coming in, no money coming in, then you don't have anything to save. And so I want to emphasize that, and let's even talk about like what those sources of income could be. Now, I'm a CPA, right? So I think about income in terms of its different characteristics, and in terms of how they're taxed. So I'm going to just approach it from that perspective, just so we can kind of lay some foundation and get some ideas about generating income. The first kind of income I want to talk about is active income, right? That's the income you make like working a 9 to 5 or having a business. Now, from a tax perspective, that's the highest, taxed income when you have income that's working from a 9 to 5. That's usually the income a lot of us have, but that's usually the income that we're trying to move people away from in terms of being the bulk of their income. But you can also generate income from having a business, right? So I have a business. I'm a CPA, so I have a CPA practice. I think I let you all know in the previous show that I have multiple businesses though, right? I have a business that rents out office space. I have a business where I work with folks on offering insurance and retirement products to clients. I have a business where, believe it or not, I rent out a mobile home. So I love RVing. I'm just now getting into it, but I love RVing. So I have an RV. And I rent that out. So that's another business that I have. And then I do payroll for my clients. So that's another business that I have too. So what is that? CPA is 1, renting out office space is 2, payroll is 3, RV is 4. The 5th one is dealing with retirement and insurance. So I've got 5 revenue streams. Oh, in this book, that's 6. So I've got 6 different businesses that I'm doing that help provide income. The reason why I make that point, and I want you to make sure that you catch this, is we talked about the ability to have income, right? You need to have income to be able to save, to be able to pay your expenses. You got to have something coming in. But the second part of that is you got to have really multiple streams of income. And I'm sure many of us have heard that, right? Some people talk about 7 streams of income. And that's a difficult number to get to, right? But I will say at least you should have more than one, right? Because the idea is if something dries up on one side, you've got something else operating on the other side. So if you have a W-2, right? A lot of us in the audience and that are listening to this live and that will listen to this on YouTube and so forth will have a 9-to-5. But you should also consider what some people may want to call a side hustle. I try to stay away from that word side hustle because it almost makes it seem like it's just something I do that, is incidental. And what I would encourage you all to do is to consider not just having a side hustle, but to really start to develop a actual business and refer to it as such. This is my business. This is my, my first business, second business, third business, but this is not a side hustle because you want to place weight and importance on it and also change your mindset about it so you can focus on growing that. But I want to encourage everyone in the audience to consider, if you don't have it and you haven't done it already, to think about what else can I do besides this 9-to-5 to generate some additional income. One, so that I can make sure that I don't rely on one source, and if that source dries up, then I'm stuck. But 2 is for the things that we're going to talk about today, and even the things we're going to talk about in the future, you're going to need to make sure that you have some income to support that. So I just wanted to lay that out there. Is let's work on developing multiple streams of income, but that's going to be another show where we'll maybe explore that some more. But active income, that's what we talked about. That's the first type of income. The second type of income you can actually have is what they call portfolio income, stocks, bonds, cryptocurrencies, and that's actually really where we are trying to lay a foundation and make sure that we start putting money aside and putting money to work, because that's really what portfolio income is, versus when you're in business, typically it's you or people that work for you or products or things that are generating that income. But when you're dealing with portfolio income, typically it is the money itself that's going to work. And then the last type of income typically is passive income, which is what some people might call mailbox money. So money that comes in from like rental properties. I talked about I rent out my office. That would be considered, passive income. That's another way to actually start making money work for you. But my point was at the top of the show is to say that in order for you to do any of the things that we're talking about today, whether it's budgeting we talked about last week or even starting to put money away, you've got to have an income stream. So that's number one. The second thing that I want to stress is, and this is what they talk about in the book, The Richest Man in Babylon, is to get acquainted and comfortable with the fact that each dollar that you earn, a portion of that is yours to keep. That's the phrase they use. A portion of the money that you bring in is yours to keep. Now that might sound crazy, right? Because you're going to say all of the money you make is yours to keep. But really what I'm referring to is if you remember last week when I laid out my budget, right? I laid out all the things that I had that I have to pay for, right? Credit cards, car notes, mortgages, insurance, a bunch of things. I got to pay for my son's school, like just a bunch of things that I've got to pay for. Those are all demands on my money. That's money going out the door, right? Cash outflow. But the mindset that we're trying to get comfortable with is the fact that from every dollar that we earn, every dollar that I earn, part of that money is mine that does not need to go out the door, that I hold on to, right? Because that's how you start moving into having money set aside to save or to invest, is to realize that not every dollar has to go out the door. And every dollar should not go out the door. Some of it is yours to keep. Now, what I will say as a man of God and a man of faith, and as a Christian man, is even above the money that I'm saying that is mine to keep, is there's a percentage that I believe is the Lord's to keep. because he's our source. The very income that I talk about, that I make and that you all make, believers and not believers, comes from him. And so we're simply a resource of the money that we get. So therefore, I would say that even above the money that we earn or keep, there's money that's got to be given to the Lord first. And I believe in the tithe. I believe in the 10%. I believe that that is the ultimate investment you can make, is giving and putting money back into his kingdom and knowing that he's going to multiply that. So I got to encourage that, because that's really the top priority. But after you do that, right? So after you've done the tithe, the next part of that I want to challenge you in is to keep a portion of that for yourself in a savings account or in an emergency fund. So I'm just talking about that part right now. We'll talk about investing later, but right now it's just being able to keep a portion of that for yourself. In the book, The Richest Man in Babylon, the author talks about, and Arcad recommends, that's the rich guy is Arcad, he recommends that you keep 10%. So that's his target number. I will say that I realize that if I'm asking you to go from not saving anything to go to 10%, so if you make $100 to hold on to $10, if you make $1,000 to hold on to $100, and if you make $10,000 to hold on to $1,000, I realize that that can be a stretch. But that is the goal. That is the goal, is that every time you get paid, I am saying, I am advocating, one, give your tithe, that's 10%, and then put 10% into monies that are either saved and put away or into a retirement. You should not spend all the money that you got coming in, which means that basically you're going to live off 80% of your money, right? So if you got $100, you're going to live off $80. If you got $1,000, you're going to live off $800. And if you've got $10,000, you're going to live off of $8,000. So that is my challenge, first of all, to you today on this broadcast for this particular episode, is to consider that. And if you're doing that, I'd like to hear from you. That would be great to hear about your testimony about how did you move from spending all that you had to actually being able to put up money to save and to put up for the future, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to move from being a person that lives from paycheck to paycheck and a person that has no monies, no resources, no extra, to really being able to move to building wealth. And I want to emphasize that point also because in the book, Arcad talks about how he was not a man of any means. I forget what his mother does. I think his father was a merchant trader. I can't remember exactly what it was. It escapes my mind right now. But they were ordinary means. So he didn't come up because of any inheritance or anything like that. He simply applied principles that allowed him to turn the corner. So that is my encouragement to you today on this first part of this segment, before I bring in our guest today, is to understand, one, that you got to have income, two, to have multiple streams of income, and three is to consider, one, tithing. That's the first, I'm not going to say savings, but the first thing you should do. But fourth is to consider putting up 10% of your income away so you can start building and not just spending everything you got. So now I want to bring in our guest today, who is a Morehouse brother of mine, who also works for me. And like I said, I'm bringing in ordinary individuals. Some guests may be, be business owners. Some guests may be, stars or whatever it is. But some folks, just everyday folks like you and I just want to kind of have them share with us their journey on how they deal with money, because I think it can be instructive for all of us. So I'd like to welcome at this time my Morehouse brother, one of the workers on my staff and a good friend of mine, Corey Gillespie. Corey, welcome to the Imperfect CPA, man. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Good, man. Good. Listen, Corey's been working with me for over 10 years, and I just think this is it's always so interesting to me when I think about Corey, because so Corey, yeah, he went to Morehouse, but Corey was not an accounting major. Corey, what was your major at Morehouse?
Biology, pre-med,
Right. And what are you doing now?
technically in a 5-year master's medical program.
Absolutely. So he's going to medical school, but Corey has been working for me on and off for over 10 years. And I actually met Corey through my wife, Tanisha, when he was over at the Moore School of Medicine. So my wife has a PhD in biology, and Corey and them met back then. And Corey was looking for something extra to do, and I needed some help in what I was doing. And some of the work that we do doesn't necessarily require an accounting degree. It just requires being able to pay attention to detail. And Corey has been just an awesome worker for us, a trustworthy brother, and I just appreciate him so much. So Corey, thanks for agreeing to be on the show and just being willing to share with the viewers out there today about things as relates to money, man.
Yeah, thanks for those kind words as well.
Yeah, no, you're welcome, bro. You're welcome. So let's dive into it, man. So listen. Usually, I ask the people that come on the show these questions, and here's the first one, man. As you were growing up, right? What
All
did
right.
you learn about money, and who did you learn it from?
Um, I didn't learn much. It wasn't a lot of profound of what I learned growing up, but my mother and father started a checking account at a local credit union. My father's a teacher, or was a teacher, and so there was a local teachers credit union. So at birth, I got a credit union account that my mother and father put money in it, which eventually became my account when I started college. So I did have an account that my parents, you know, pieced money into it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't really a lot of knowledge about that account. It's just that I would go with my parents or one of them, and we would go and they would deposit the money, and I would just stand there, and it would be a transaction, and we would go home. It wasn't a lot of knowledge about what was going on. As I got a little bit older, I realized that I had my own account with my own account number with my name on it, with a
Mm-hmm.
certain amount of dollars in it. Outside of that, the other interesting thing that for me was my dad, as I mentioned, was a PE teacher, which is actually my teacher for K through 5. He would actually give me money because we had to pay for my lunch. He would actually give me a certain amount of money for either a week or 2 weeks. And then instead of him giving me lunch money for every day, he gave me enough money for a week or 2 weeks. And I was supposed to, spend that money wisely
I like
and
it.
not run out of it.
How did
So
that work out? Did you end up running out of lunch money in a day or two or the week, or how'd that go?
obviously in the beginning, I would run out. And also, when you have this extra money in your hand, you buy extra snacks at lunchtime. But I also would ask my mom sometimes if I could use the money. So I may run out of money before it was time, as you're mentioning,
Yeah.
and then I would have to ask for more money, which would be some small lesson.
Mm,
Why did you run out? What did you spend it on? And what would you do if I don't give you more money?
mm,
How will you eat?
right.
I think outside of that, my dad has always had this checklist type thing, which is what I've used in research when I met Tanisha, and it's also what I use with working with you. My dad would always write down kind of like a master list of like what you need. It wasn't always bills, but
Mm,
like these are the things you need.
mm,
This is how much they cost. It's kind of like a
mm.
pro con.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
really need to buy a type scenario? I think those three things for me is the gist of what I learned about money, and I guess it would be from my dad and my mother.
I I like that because it's, I mean, that's more than most. I didn't necessarily have that kind of thing growing up. I particularly like the idea of your dad giving you the money to
It
kind of
was
make
funny.
it a last. That's, I mean, it's funny, but it also seems to have taught a lesson early on, because I'm sure eventually your mom and your dad weren't going to keep supplementing. If you spent the money too soon, you basically had to make it stretch out, which is what we kind of have to do when we get money, get paid
Grow
every
up,
two
right?
weeks. so,
Right.
so I like that. And then you said you also do a pros and cons. So does that mean that, for example, that if there's things that you may want versus things that you need, that if the wants aren't high priority, that you'll discipline somewhat to say, look, I'm going to put that off for right now? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get us too far ahead, but now sometimes I use my niece with this because we do this. If it's like a big electronic we want, or maybe clothes, or she likes high end purses, we'll text one another and say, hey, I really want this gift or this thing or this item. It costs this amount. Should I get it? And then we'll ask each other, like, are you going to put it on the credit card and pay it off immediately? Or are you going to put it on the credit card and let it sit? And if you're going to let it sit, for how long? And then we'll ask ourselves, even if it's at the grocery store, you go in with your list of what you need,
Yeah.
the lettuce, the cheese, whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll go in a grocery store and it's like, I'll put it in the basket and I'll say, is this a need or a want? And if it's a need, I
Wow.
get it. If it's a want, it's kind of like, I still may get it because I'm
Right.
cheating. But sometimes you actually put the want back because it's not on the need list. So sometimes my niece and I do that with like
uh,
big purchases. I think the last one she did was a Tory Burch purse. And before that, it was a laptop. It's kind of like, should she
wow.
buy it or not? We try to check, like, we check each other.
Check each other. No, I like that accountability thing. So I want to get to that in a minute. What I do want to talk about though is now that we've talked about kind of what your mom and your dad taught you about money, how did that play out? So we know kind of how that played out in, I guess in your early years, elementary,
Childhood.
junior, high school. How did that play out when you got to college, and maybe even not shortly after you graduated? How did either the things you learned or didn't learn, how did that affect you then?
So I am so all right. So I show up. I can't remember now how much money I had when I got to college in that credit union because it didn't last long. Man, I think it lasted me until sophomore year. But
Oh, that's good.
yeah, it lasted until sophomore year because my dad was still supplementing,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm very fortunate. I know most people don't have that blessing, but my dad was still supplementing, so I still had that money. Um, so I would be able to go to check the balance. I would be able to buy certain things. Mostly in this case, mostly needs,
Mm-hmm.
books, materials, everyday expenditures. But
Can I
it
pause
allowed for me
you?
to see.
Let me just pause you right there real quick because I think that's interesting. One, that you were able to make, even though your dad was supplementing, you were able to make the money last through your sophomore year, and that you spent it mostly on needs. Because I know that when I got to college, my freshman year, I was so ready to get out the house. I got credit cards. I went crazy. Didn't pay the credit cards. How did you have enough wherewithal, or what was your mindset such that you were like, look,
Oh,
I don't have any extra money to play around with, or I'm gonna get in trouble if I don't do what I need to do
oh,
here.
oh no! You diving into where I guess we're going. I ended up with a mass pile of credit debt. So it's like the money that I should have been using, the liquid cash that I should have been using, even though it would have run out faster. I was using credit cards because I too got the credit card at Morehouse, and then I'm just swiping, 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 for needs, but a lot more wants at this point.
Mhm.
There is no check and balance of do I really need this or want this. It's just kind of like I have a card. I'm
Uh,
going to use the minimum and pay the minimum. So I was swiping. So that's probably the only reason that money lasted until sophomore year.
I got you. But and
Yeah.
so I also heard something else then. So at least you understood when you got the credit card, right? Even though you were swiping, I'm sure you did. You max them out? Did you max all the cards out?
Eventually, all my cards were maxed out.
Gotcha.
There has been a point all my cards have been maxed out.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But you paid on you paid the minimum at
I
least
paid the
every month?
minimum.
I got
My
you. So you
mom
paid
taught
on
me
the
that
card.
one.
Okay, okay, your mom. Okay, so good. So something else your mom taught you is make sure you pay the credit card minimum. Okay, good. Okay, so that's freshman, sophomore. So all. What about junior and senior year? How were you? How was it going?
Junior and senior year, money was definitely getting tighter. It wasn't really much. So okay, the credit union money was depleted, and at this point, I'm straining even further on my dad. This is also around the time my mother was getting sick, so then she became disabled, so it made less money in the household. So it's like my dad is giving more money, which is technically running up his personal debt. But I'm also looking at it like I can get more credit card, which of course I'm showing good spending pattern
Mm-hmm,
because I think I had Macy's before I got to Morehouse. I think, or at the same time I showed
mm-hmm,
up.
mm-hmm,
That was my first card. But
mm-hmm.
I think probably by the time junior year rides around, I probably have Macy's, an American Express Blue, and I can't remember. It wasn't Capital One. I think it may have been. I don't remember the card, but I had one other
Mm-hmm.
card at that point. So I'm using all three, but I'm only using these because I'm not telling my dad the truth. Do you have money? Yeah, I have money because I'm trying to lay the strain off him a little. But honestly, I don't have money. But I'm swiping at this point.
I
so
understand
that I
that.
can tell him that I have money because I know that he's being stretched even further, and I feel bad.
Gotcha. So you're trying to make the credit cards work as best you can to kind of get you through because your income is limited, so you don't really have much
Right. I'm
underneath
using
because
the credit card as cash,
right,
as liquid, but it's
right.
not liquid.
Right. And did you have a job while you were in college at all? Any of the 4 years?
I did work in the bookstore. I think in my last year, but the first 3 years I struggled academically, so I wasn't working. It was just
Mm-hmm.
straight to the books.
Gotcha.
I did work in summer, but not during the terms.
Gotcha. Did the money from the summer kind of help you cover during the year, or kind of that money was spent, elsewhere?
That money kind of helped me pay those minimums. Those
Mm-hmm.
minimum balances that I've
Gotcha.
now racked up.
Yeah.
So
So,
I'm just hamster willing.
Gotcha. So, not enough money to really supplement yourself. Try not to. So, I guess one of the things that we're also learning is, and that I've learned, I think a lot of us have to learn, is to really be able to tell the truth about our finances. And I say the truth because your father didn't know really exactly what you needed. You were trying to be mindful of not putting too much strain on him, but in doing so, you're not being completely candid about the financial position you're in to
Right.
really help come up with a solution to get out. You're just kind of
Right.
pedaling along.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I think that also limits, well, not limit. I think that's also because there was a limit to what I learned at home. There weren't
Mm-hmm.
many conversations to talk about where are you financially, and what does it look
Mm-hmm.
like to get better or worse or status. Yeah, so that's probably why I'm also not telling him the truth or being transparent.
Understood. So out of college now, graduated from Morehouse. What year did you graduate from Morehouse?
I graduated 2008
2008.
during the
Okay, so
recession.
gotcha. During the recession, right? So now you're out, right? So now you're on your own. So at, at what point do things kind of come to a head, and you're like, look, I gotta make some different decisions.
My story is very long. It doesn't really come to a head since it was the recession, since we were struggling to find jobs because my job was at Atlantic Station
Mm-hmm.
at the movies. That was
Mm-hmm.
my job out of college. It really what it boils down to is it was a wave of us all going to get graduate degrees because we couldn't afford to live and pay the loans. So I don't think it honestly came to a head for me until after I completed grad school and then finally got my first real job because my job out of Morehouse wasn't my real job, at least
Gotcha.
not a college job.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So
Um,
this thing that I really talked about before you came in, Corey, about income is a. I mean, of course, it's a real thing, but it's a real thing. Like it seems like it is the thing that continued to perpetuate to be the issue through college, right? You don't have enough income to cover. Your dad can only do so much. He doesn't know really how much you need him to do. You're getting out of college. You're working at a movie theater because still not enough income. You're going to graduate school to try to get, I guess to use loan money to fund, kind of your lifestyle, and then finally get out, and then finally you're able to get some
an
breathing room
income,
because you got some income. So once you got
right?
income, you start to kind of turn the corner there. How did you start to the income, the debt is still there, right? The credit card debt is
Oh
still
yes.
still there. How did you start to turn the corner with that?
I first started, of course, get adjusted in the job, and then I go back to what my dad would always do. I start writing out all of the bills, writing out the bills, writing out the minimum payment each month, long before they start putting on the bill how much you needed to pay in order to pay off within 3 years.
Yeah,
I was extrapolating because science is the background. I was extrapolating like how long it would take at the minimum, um,
that's
and
great.
and then I don't know at what portion. I can't remember exactly how long I had worked at Morehouse School of Medicine before you and I met one another and I started working with you. So I would say that eventually a second income came in, which technically is you. So I'm at this point. Once I piled in the extra money, one thing my dad said at that point was, "When you get a raise, or in this case, when I started working for you, don't give your life a raise." So he's like, "Don't
That's
spend more money
good.
because you make more money." Which technically, I didn't have more money to spend because the more money I was getting from you were going to be to pay technically debt.
Yeah.
Um,
but still, but I think that's a good point, because one of the things that I talked about earlier before you came on is the fact of, okay, so income is important, obviously, right? Because you got to have some cash flow to pay something, but the ability to have multiple streams of revenue becomes
Helps out.
helpful as well. So now it's kind of like, I got Moore School of Medicine. I got Eric McLaughlin LLC over here. Your dad's telling you don't spend, everything that you got coming. Don't give yourself your life a raise because you got a raise. So that creates some additional income. So that's good. So you've got this additional income. You made this plan about paying off stuff. But I seem to remember at some point, Corey, right, that you were able to kind of start to resolve some of that credit card debt and start attacking it and getting it down into a more manageable position. Can
Yes.
you tell the audience about what you did to do that?
Yeah. So I think honestly, I probably paid minimum payments for at least 5 years while working multiple jobs. They're just every month using the card, and even worse, I was still using the cards, paying the minimum. And sometimes I was even going over the max. I would pay back down, bring it back down below the max. So honestly, I probably did that 5 years. My best friend, who I hadn't mentioned, his name is Blake. Blake had done a Marcus loan. Long we had been discussing our finances, but he did a Marcus loan before me, and
What's
it
a
worked
Marcus
out for
loan?
him. They don't have them anymore, but Goldman Sachs has this. They had
Oh,
at this point
yes.
they had this thing called the Marcus loan, where you
Mm.
can borrow a certain amount of money, throw all your credit card debt into that, and then you make this minimum payment. And he did it because he wanted his credit score to go up, because at the time he was trying to buy a home. But he sat me down and told me that I could get the Marcus loan, put all my credit card debt there, which I was like, wow, I can. He was like, you can put your credit card debt there. You won't owe any credit debt at that point. He said your credit score is going to go up because you've paid off your credit cards. And he said, in each month that you pay the Marcus loan, it's going to show that you are, a good steward. You're paying the bill. And Marcus loan even had where 2 times you could not make your payment. Like I think
Yeah.
after
Hmm.
10
Skip a
consecutive
payment.
payments, yeah, it's like an emergency. I don't have my money this month.
Yeah.
So I used the Marcus loan, paid off the credit card debts, and then I was able to pay that loan. I think that loan was paid off maybe 3 years ago. Um,
Wait, so let's pause right there, because I think you bring up this is just incredibly good stuff. So you did what they call, really what is called as a credit card consolidation loan, when you take the monies from a loan to pay off your cards to zero,
right,
because credit cards right now, I think they're almost 29-30% is what the interest rate is, versus you may
right.
not remember. Do you remember approximately what the rate was on that Marcus loan?
I don't remember that Marcus loan. Let's see. I think I probably paid in about 15, 16,000 is what the credit debt I had at the time.
Hmm. Hmm. And you said you
And I
paid it off
probably
in
did.
about 3 years?
It was a 3 year. It was a
Okay.
3 year loan.
So I'm just going to extrapolate without having the information that the interest rate on that was much lower
Then
than
the
the
credit
interest rate on the
card.
credit card. And what would, if you normally look at credit cards, right? And they tell you, then you said you did this yourself, right? If you make the minimum payments for so long, how many years was it going to take you?
Honestly, with that 15, 16,000 was greater than 15, 20 years.
Right.
Like, well,
So,
I'm sorry. Probably, I think it was like 7 or 8 years,
right.
each card. But
Right. So
I
you
guess about
bought
10 years.
so you cut the time in more than half by simply doing this credit card loan. Can you talk to the audience also about, so we've talked about the interest rate, the benefit of the interest rate, right? The benefit of being able to pay
Right.
it off faster. What did that do for your actual cash flow though, when you went from paying multiple credit cards, right? Minimum payments every month versus did one payment to Marcus every month?
That's an excellent question. It's so I think I only got that one raise at Moore School of Medicine, and then I couldn't get another. So my income also went up there, but only slightly. But to answer your question, it gave you options, something that I hadn't had at that point. You could apply more to the Marcus loan if you wanted to, so that you can pay it off faster, which I didn't do. You could pay it off more. You can now actually have more liquid cash, which I technically at that age still had never had. I didn't travel real places, but you could travel. You could just try to live life a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
or you could try to create a savings account. Because at all this whole time, which is sad, I wasn't saving any money for this decade. There was no money being saved. Every month, I'm just paying, like you mentioned earlier, I'm paying everything that I have. I'm just going around in circles. So you
Mm-hmm.
could save money. You can pay more on your loans if you want to pay off debt faster. You just got options of what you can do. For
Right.
me, it was like I was trying to save a little bit
Mhm.
because I'd always hear, my aunts and people say you want to have 3 months worth of rent saved up. And so in my mind, I'm trying to save up 3 months worth of rent,
Right.
which I
Yeah, this
laugh
is
at. It's serious, but
right. No, but this is good. So you've paid off your credit cards, right? Now you've paid off the Marcus loan. So what did that do then? Did that create now the opportunity for you to save, or what kind of happened after you got kind of this credit card thing under control?
once I got the credit card thing under control, when working with you, we haven't mentioned, but a lot of times I worked overnight, which we will have to talk about that further
Right,
later. But I would work
right.
overnight. There's a guy at 191 named Anthony, who works, I think, for GP. I would talk to Anthony sometime on my breaks. I'd go downstairs to the lobby to the concierge desk, and he would be talking about stocks. I don't know anything about stocks. I'm talking probably this is a 3 or 4 year conversation in the middle of the night,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
crazy. He would be talking about stocks, how long he's been in stocks. At that time, Anthony had been in stocks greater than 15 years.
Uh,
And so we would talk stocks. And then that kind of got me my antenna turned on about stocks, but it didn't happen automatically. And another thing that kind of happened after the credit card debt was paid off was high yield savings accounts,
Yes.
which I'm a very much stickler about now in my personal life with everyone around me. I try to push them to get the high yield saving account.
I love it. I'm a big
Um,
proponent of high yield savings accounts.
I am too.
Yes. And all a high
Yeah, so
yield savings account really is, just for the audience who doesn't know, is it's just usually accounts that pay, like right now, I think you can get at least 4.5.
four and a
Some of them are
half.
over 5. Some of them are actually at like 6.15% that you put in. They have minimums, some of them, but the point being that if you can put your money into a high yield account, which is okay, so I'm not an investment advisor, I'm not advising, but savings accounts in general, are less risky than stocks, cryptos, and bonds.
Yes.
So you'll be more enticed to hold on to it there versus trying to put it in the market or somewhere else where
Right.
it could be at risk. Yeah, that's great, Corey. Go. I'm sorry. Continue.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess to try to summarize, talking to Anthony and then another guy, Steve, who also worked at the time at
Mm-hmm.
191. Those two guys were talking stocks. They were talking stocks, and it wasn't until we got the money during the pandemic from the government, I
Yeah.
took those checks and dumped those checks fully into the stock market because I never would have that amount of money. So I put around $3,000 into the stock market, and it's been
Mm-hmm.
in there since the pandemic began when we first received the stimulus checks. And then the high yield savings account. We're 2024 now. Honestly, I think my high yield saving account started maybe 2021.
Mm-hmm. What
Don't
was
have
the
much
interest rate
in
at
it.
that time? What was the interest rate at
Uh,
that time, approximately?
Honestly, it was two maybe. It was under three, and now I think I have an American Express high yield. I think it's 4.5 the last
Mm-hmm.
time. It
Yeah.
keeps fluctuating between
Yeah, it
four
can
and four or
fluctuate.
five.
Mm-hmm. You know what? But
Um,
you you just bringing up so many nuggets here that are so good, Corey, because a lot of us, I put me included in that, got that stimulus money and did things other than say, you know what,
right.
I'm gonna hold on to that. This money's never gonna come around like this again, and I'm gonna put it to work. And I'm just so encouraged, and just proud of you, Corey, because you said you took, if I heard you correctly, you took the stimulus money that you got and put it into the market, and you haven't spent it, huh?
Yeah, it's doubled. It was about 3,000.
Oh,
I've topped out at about 7,300, but I think right now it's probably at about maybe 68. So it's
Corey,
doubled since I put it in.
that is such a great example because the pandemic. So you would have gotten that money in what, 2020?
2020, I guess, but it's probably late 2020. But
Right.
no, May. Some of my first stocks were purchased in May 2020.
So almost 4 years later, your money is doubled. That
Yes,
is that is the classic example of making your money work for you and making money your employee. And I didn't know that part of the story, of course. I'm just so proud of you, but it's also so exemplary of what we're talking about today. And even your whole story, I know it's much more elements to it and much more we could talk about over that 15-year plus journey to get here. But the fact that, you know, you have been able to amass some money into investments, maybe a little bit of money in savings, but pay off credit card debt. So free yourself up from that and be able to make it so that, because right now, let's talk about what you're doing right now, right? So you're in a program heading to a program on your way to medical school. I don't know how to phrase it, but an
Right.
entryway, a gateway into a medical school program, right?
Right.
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 So you
Yeah.
go ahead.
I'm in a I'm in a 5-year master's DO, Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine, medical program in
Right.
Arkansas. Um, I guess one thing before saying that, one other thing I didn't mention as far as finances is when I left Atlanta Tech, which I haven't stated, but Atlanta Tech was my full-time job after completing graduate school. Um, when I first left Atlanta Tech, they were putting money into the retirement. I wasn't doubling it because I couldn't match it. When I left Atlanta Tech, I just left my money sitting there because I didn't know anything about it. And then a different guy who I talked to said that I should get a Roth account, but I didn't know what a Roth account was. So I
Right.
eventually, long story short, ended up calling Morehouse School, Atlanta Tech, sorry, and saying, hey, I would like to get my money. And I took the money from Atlanta Tech and rolled it into a Roth,
Right.
uh, which, it's under $4,000. But I took that money, put it in a Roth instead of sitting there because I was able to put that money into the market as
Right.
well.
Exactly.
Um,
And let me just before you continue on, just give some understanding for the audience. You know what Corey's talking about when he's talking about the Roth. All a Roth is, it's an investment, usually a retirement investment where it allows you to put in after-tax dollars. So 401ks, the traditional 401ks, where you put in pre-tax dollars, meaning that you are taking money that you have not paid taxes on yet, putting it into a retirement instrument, letting that money grow, like Corey said, putting it into market, letting it do its work. And then when you draw on it, then it becomes taxable and you pay taxes on it. With a Roth, what Corey would have had to have done when he rolled that money in is he would have paid taxes on that money because it's coming out of a tax deferred instrument into Roths are basically tax free. So you pay taxes on the money now before it goes in there. But now, even though it may be only $4,000, whatever it grows to when you retire in so many years, that all of that money will be tax free to you. So that's just
yeah.
a beautiful, beautiful thing. But I'm sorry, Corey, continue.
Yeah, I only mention that because you mentioned where I am now. So where I am now, with the mindset that I have, I do this trajectory. The end game is I expect for my income to possibly quadruple from where I was previously. And so I expect to be able to put more money into that Roth. And so I figured, like you were thinking, if my money increases, if I put money in the Roth, I will continue to put it in the stock. But if I
Mm-hmm.
put it in the Roth, I'm also still dumping money in the high yield savings account. This is after I finish school.
Yes.
I'm putting money in the high yield. I have the stock portfolio, but I also have the Roth. And I'm thinking on the back end, since the beginning of my financial life was very rocky and ugly, I'm thinking on the back end, I'll actually be able to like take the vacations I haven't taken and like live a different life than kind of how I started, and live a life that even my mother and father didn't live because we pretty much were a household who more or less lived check to check as well. That's kind of the
Absolutely.
mindset, but um,
No, that's awesome, Corey, and I thank you for sharing. I mean, you were so transparent with us on the show today. You've made so many great strides, and there's just so many nuggets to pick up. The importance of looking at wants versus needs, and the pros and cons that your dad talked to you about. I think that's an important lesson to learn and to figure out the importance of putting money away. Putting it into a high yield is something that was important. The importance of getting rid of the credit card debt and even being able to say I'm going to consolidate this, pay this off quickly, and get done with it. And something
right,
that kind of we glossed over, but that you talked about when you're talking about having conversation with Anthony and Steve, I just think that is so important because that speaks to the circle of people that you had around you and the ability to get knowledge that you didn't have, the
right.
ability for Corey to be open to receive that knowledge and to do something with it. I just
Yeah, I
think is
wouldn't have
so
stocks
powerful.
without those two guys.
Absolutely. That is awesome.
Yeah,
That is a credit. And I'm gonna say this, and I hope this doesn't come off as derogatory because I don't mean it as. But the fact that those two gentlemen were security guards, right, in the 191 building, right. So they're
right,
security guards. So sometimes we think one thing about people, and it's a completely separate thing. These dudes out there doing what they got to do. We don't know what else is going on in their lives. But one thing we do know is that they were making some money moves. And that speaks
Right.
to the point that I want to emphasize, that I hope everybody that watches this broadcast understands it, that it does not matter who you are or what station in life you're at, how much money you make. It really is a factor of how much money you keep. We don't know what Steve and Anthony had going on. We don't know how many jobs they had going on or what they had going on, but we do know one thing, that they were doing something with investments, and therefore they were making their money work, and they were able to pass that knowledge off to my brother Corey, who was then able
Right.
to help himself. And now you talked about even you working with your niece now, you all talking about needs and wants, and should I put this on a credit card and stuff. I just think all of those things, Corey, are so instructive about the things that we can do to kind of change our financial picture. And I just want to thank you, Corey, for being transparent with the audience today. I tell you all the time that I'm just so proud of you and the path that you're on, that you didn't give up. Corey's been on this journey for going to medical school for a while. I think that's nothing that you're trying to hide or whatever. But I love the fact that Corey's going to keep going. That's part of what this life is about, is not allowing people to distract you or deter you from what you feel like God's call is for your life. And as long as I've known you, Corey, you talk about being a doctor, and with your demeanor, I just know that your bedside manner is going to be incredible. People are going to be so blessed and fortunate to have someone like you that truly cares. And I'm not saying that other doctors don't. There's plenty of doctors that care, but having you added to that number is going to be such a blessing to the medical profession. I wish you well on your journey, Corey. And if you have any parting words for those that are in the audience, I want to leave the last word to you in terms of what would you tell those that are in the audience that may just be getting started on this journey, or may not have started on this journey at all, but should.
I could maybe two or three things. One thing you said is circling yourself around people who have the knowledge, that's willing to get it. Being not stern, being open-minded to wanting to receive it. Sometimes you're going to get information, you don't even know what to do with it. You don't even know why you're getting it. It may not even be applicable in your life, even in the next 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
But just if you can hold on to it, use it, store it away like in a file somewhere. Because like you said, that's happened for me. I think a second thing for me as an aspiring physician, I think about stress a lot. There's a good stress, there's bad stress, but in life, sometimes we always think stress is just bad, but sometimes it's actually good to have a little stress. Like in sports, it makes you do better, you perform better.
Mm-hmm.
So I make that point because it's kind of like having debt is technically always looked at as a bad thing, but people should kind of learn about it if they don't know about. Some debt is good debt. So like just because you have debt don't mean it's a bad thing, because you're kind of like you're in the game. Like if you have a credit card, you're in the game because not everybody has a credit card, but it's about like
Good
knowing it's
point.
managing. Like how do you stay in the game, and how do you perform in the game like an MVP? Like, cause you got to have some debt in order to be in the game.
I love it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know some people would disagree, but I love it.
That's kind of how I think about it. Like if you're not in the game, then you're not going to get that big home that you want one day, or you may not go on that vacation. So I think that's probably the parting words I could give.
Gotcha. Well, no, I appreciate that, Corey. Again, for sharing, being transparent, sharing knowledge and wisdom that you have. Bro. I look forward to seeing you whenever you're back in the A. Because right now you're in Chicago, right now, right?
I'm in Chicago, but I currently live in Jonesboro, Arkansas, though. But
Arkansas, exactly. But when you come to the A, look forward to seeing you, man. I love you, and I appreciate you being on the show today, man.
all right, love you too. Thanks for
All
having
right,
me.
take care, bro. All right,
All right.
cool. So you all, I am, gosh, I didn't expect to hear all that I got from Corey today. I'm so glad that he was on today. I didn't plan it this way, but a lot of the points that Corey brought up, I think, really give credence to what I mentioned at the beginning of the show: the importance of having income, the importance of having multiple streams of income, so you can get started on the journey. And that's what I want for you all. As we go through this journey together from week to week, my want and desire for you all is to grow your money knowledge, your money wealth, your money muscle, to be making moves and to get started today. Don't let another day go by. Get started today. If you don't have a second stream of income, think about what that second stream of income could be. If you don't have a high yield savings account, start looking for a high yield savings account. They're out there. Credit unions, all over. If you're not putting money in your retirement account, let's start thinking about doing that, at least so we can match what our employer is giving to us. But I want you to get started today. So listen, as we end this show on today, visit my website, ericmclaughlin.com. Shoot me a note or a question. Let me know if you like the show. Buy my book. I'm really working on getting this out. It's done. It's in editing. I'm in my final stages to get it out to you all. I'm really excited about you all being able to buy the book and share. Put comments in the Facebook section or even on YouTube. I hope you will subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can get notified of when I go live and when I'm sharing these tips so we can all grow together. So until next week, I look forward to seeing you all. And as my mentor, Jerome Edmondson would say, I'll see you at the top. Take care.